Hello everyone, this is Debo and welcome to this video. So in today's video, we'll be doing an update on the unique hero tier list for the month of May, and we have a special guest together with us on this one, and he's none other than Lulleh. So in case you guys don't know who Lulleh is, he's a top ranking player for the Arena, Colosseum, as well as guild rates within the EU server, and we spent quite a bit of time working together on this video. So this video will be super informative, and since there's so much information, I'll be splitting up this video into two parts, and I'll link the second part of this video on the card as well as the description down below, so do go follow the second part of the video for the full tier list. So this video is so long after I done the editing that I have no choice but to speed it up, but I assure you this is a super duper detailed one, and without further ado, let us jump straight onto the tier list. So in case you guys didn't read the paragraph earlier, for the tier list we'll be grading each hero for three main categories, mainly Arena, Colosseum, as well as rates. So we'll rate the hero from 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst score and 10 being the best one. So let's start with our first hero on the list, which is Plitvice. So we grade Plitvice 4 for Arena, 3 for Colosseum, 7 for rate, with a total score of 14.
So yeah, no, I don't think Plitvice is that good for Arena. It's actually pretty bad. She only fits in a fire team as well, and with all those water units, she's pretty much just gonna die. It's just better to put Beth with Lynn instead, because that's pretty much what you would do. And she has really slow attacks, and that doesn't help either. As for Colo, melee is just worse than ranged overall, and fire mono or like 2 or 3 fire in there is not gonna help anyone. You meet like a Graham and Bianca team, which is pretty common, then you're just done anyways. And as we know, the AI is just terrible with the melee. They're just gonna clump up on a tank and just die. So, and yeah, for raids, while she won't carry the damage herself, the buff she provides, 50% fire attack, is a must-have for a fire mono team, which would consist of Lynn, Plit, Beth, and Akayuki. And you can obviously change. We're not going to talk about that actually, but you may want to change Akayuki for Lynn, for example, as a leader for certain bosses like Shadow Beast, for example. But yeah, she definitely has a spot in there, and she's really strong. But you don't need to like MLB her. I think it's as long as she is awakened, so she gives the fire damage. That's more than enough.
So overall, since fire is like the weakest element in the game right now, even though her party buff makes her a great unit in fire team, it's not that attractive overall, and unless you really want to play a mono fire team, then she won't be a really good investment in terms of overall power levels. And the next unit is Lapice, as we rate her 6 for Arena, 3 for Colo, 7 for Raid. So we personally don't have that much experience with her, but she's commonly seen in the arena with the mono light teams in both Asia 2 as well as the Korean server. So since Dark Element is an in element right now, with the likes of Noxia, Okma, Beth running all around, right, occasionally Arabelle, Lapice is definitely more viable than Plitvice in terms of arena due to her higher usage. Whereas her other categories are really similar to Plitvice, therefore they have the same score for the Colosseum as well as guild rates.
While Lapice is also sort of niche like Plitvice, I think she's a better unit overall, and she works really nice in a light mono team. Much better so than a fire mono, because she actually can do some damage herself. However, she is pretty hard to play, so you need to get used to the fact that she's limited to the X and Y axis. Like, she can only attack up and to the sides, up and down and to the sides, not like diagonally. And that could be a bit weird. So same thing with a weapon skill. I mean, you really want to hit that, but if you can get consistent on that with some practice, I think it's a pretty viable option for if you would go that route. But mono teams obviously in arena could be dangerous, because it could backfire if you face a Nari, for example, just ruin everything for you. As far as Colo goes, it's the same thing as Plit there. She's a melee, and that's not really going to work. She will of course buff the light team, but then again, it's pretty easy to counter, and you will just be like a sitting duck there if you have a team like that, because you just have someone that has some basic units and they could just wipe you off the map. So as for raiding, she pretty much has the same role as Plitvice, except that as far as I remember, there's only one boss where you kind of wanted her, and that was on the Elphaba. Nowadays, like from the bosses we've seen after, the light teams has been consisting of ranged units, so having her there isn't really gonna like add much. It's like if you don't have any better option, you could kind of put her in and do some damage, but you shouldn't build her for that now, I think. I don't think that's like a reason enough to do it, because like I said, Plitvice, she is going to be in the fire mono team, period. But this one probably isn't going to be, unless there's like a very niche situation or boss that requires it.
And moving to my personal favorite, who is Marina, as she's 8 for Arena, 6 for Colo, and 4 for Raids. So she's my personal favorite as she's one of the first few heroes that I started the game with, and she's still a solid unit in Arena if you know how to play her, but she's definitely slowly getting outclassed by the newer and meta units. So I still run her in Colosseum myself as she can be quite disruptive to the backline with her Hulk, and she's still very decent as a tanker, but not as overpowered compared to Okma and Future Princess. So my take for raid for her is pretty straightforward, since tanks are only really viable if your guild reaches the later levels where you need more survivability in your units. Tankers don't really see much use in guild raids, so this lowers Marina's score by quite a bit, since tankers don't deal out as much damage as your range attacker or your warrior units, so they are not that good in raids.
Marina is very potent on the right map. I usually refer to them as the S map, or that box map where you can't really escape with those dead ends. The problem obviously is Meryl being out now, and that's gonna make it really scary for Marina. She doesn't have a chance. Actually, when I played last week with Meryl, I got chained by Marina because I misplayed, and I still killed it with more than half HP left. So it's kind of like she's pretty much been pushed out now. But like I said, on the right map, she's really good still, because she could just lock you in and get that shield up and like chain you. On the wrong map, however, she is very annoying to play, because you will just try to chase people and you don't just reach them. That's just super annoying. So generally, the larger maps, people have more ways to escape from her weapon skill, and that's going to be really annoying for you. As for Colo, she is definitely a better option than the previous two, simply because she is actually a tank, not just a melee unit. She could also obviously shield the team and all that stuff, but she's not really being used in there for good reason. There are just better tank options if you want to do that, and she doesn't really have the AoE taunt like the other actual tanks either. She just has the anchor to pull one enemy. There are like two situations where I could think that you may want to use her in a raid, and that's not like if you have everything. It's more like if it's like a band-aid solution really, and that's on Fairy and Harvester. You could put Libera on her, use the Airborne to stun those bosses. They give pretty decent CC. I actually remember using that myself in the start of the game. But then again, there are obviously a lot better options. So this is more like if you have nothing better, and those bosses just have to go down, then that could be the last solution for it. But generally, no, not a raid unit.
Arabelle is a 7 for Arena, 8 for Colo, and 8 for Raid. So Arabelle has been significantly buffed about 2 to 3 patches back, which increased her overall damage tremendously, making her pretty suitable to lead the Dark team in both raids as well as Colo. So her weapon skill being able to 2-hit crowd control the enemy, as well as herself being a speedier unit, makes it hard for you to actually chase after her in the correct maps in Arena. So although I feel that her party buff is a bit limiting in terms of team building, her overall damage output is definitely worthy for investment if you are into a fast attacker that is able to do big dark range damage.
Arabelle as well is very map dependent. She needs a lot of space to move around and kind of get away from the enemy, because she's not super tanky. She's pretty squishy actually once if you can like reach her. But that's the exact problem, to reach her, because she's really fast as well. So if she has a lot of room and like hiding space, she could be very hard to kill. She also has this trick where she can actually chain in 2 weapon skills instead of 3 if you bounce it against the wall. So for example, if you stand on one side of the wall and you shoot it through the wall, it will like bounce on the wall and hit 2 times instead of 3, or sorry, 1 obviously, and then you can chain in 2 weapon skills, which is also a nice trick with her if you can pull that off. So with the right map and the right setup, she can be pretty damn good for Arena. But then again, she also is quite setup dependent. For example, she wants Noxia in there in Ogma. Then there's Colo, of course. She has probably became a popular lead with the introduction of Noxia. Although I think that kind of moved away a little bit now. As for raids, while she can deal a lot of damage, she is also a buffer, just like Plit and Lapice, but she does have a more overall value than those two, because she can actually deal a lot more damage to herself, and you also have some other game modes where she is more viable. The problem in the raid that the Dark Mono team, which consists of Beth, Lupina, Eugene, or Lynn with Tartaros or Xax, respectively, that's obviously a melee team, and she's just going to buff the team instead of getting buffed herself. So she loses a little bit of damage there, of course.
So we grade Eva as a 5 for Rina, 8 for Colo, and 7 for Red. So from a personal experience, she's really frail in arena, and even though she can 2-hit crowd control the enemy, she don't really survive that well until the second one in certain matchups, like she just dies in the first one. And at the same time, with the presence of Okma, Beth, and Noxia being prominent in arena, her basic party buff is more of a hindrance than anything else, because you need another basic unit to actually tap on her basic buff to make it like more powerful. So this means that you are actually making yourself frail to the dark matchups that you're going to face a lot within arena. So overall, she's not that powerful in the arena, even though she does a lot of damage as well. Not as high as Arabelle, but decent damage. And I would definitely say that she's a key part for any basic raid teams right now, because she can buff the whole team and provide them with basic attack buff. So she's really strong, right? But only really in basic raid team. So that means that she's not super duper amazing, because she's not that flexible overall in terms of team building.
So Idol Eva is not a super amazing choice for arena. It's more like a poor man's Gabriel in a way, because she has more passive healing, I guess. Like you have the last hit on her rotation, which heals her a little bit. But I mean, she gets encountered by a lot of units. You would probably thank yourself if you meet an FP and you have her, because hitting her weapon skill is pretty easy and pretty hard to avoid for the enemy. So you just need 2 of those, and then it's like bye-bye FP, and that really hurts. But then again, she buffs basic attack as well, so that kind of makes it kind of weird for you to play her, because you don't really want to go with a basic mono in arena. So I would kind of stay away from that. For Colo, she definitely had a solid spot there with the introduction of Future Knight, that is, with the basic mono config, where you had FK and Nari in the team. But then Noxia, of course, came, and that kind of changed, as it always does. Raids is a very solid buffer for a basic mono team, and that would be the Nari FK setup with FK lead. And she's really good in that one. So in that case, it would be nice. I would probably put her in the same spot as Plitvice and Lapice, though. She's more of a buffer, so I wouldn't like rush and MLB her and all that, unless you of course want to do other game modes, for example. Another plus is that not many people may actually have built her, so that would also help your guild quite a lot in raids. So having a basic team is not very common. So if you are one like that, you're probably gonna be a hero if you do face a light boss and you can actually put a team like this.
And we move on to the 6th unit, which is Bari. So we grade Bari 6 for Rina, 8 for Colo, and 9 for Red. So for Rina, I have 3 words for her, and that is too many counters. So there's too many counters to her in arena at the higher ranks, and I think because she's one of the older units in the arena, people know how to play against her. And since there's so many units that does so well against her, right? At first you only have Vishuvac, now you have Okma, you have Lahn, right? Lahn was the greatest hit on her. Princess does really well against Bari as well. Even Beth does really well against Bari. So there's just way too many units that's good against Beth, and that makes her not so viable right now. Although the introduction of Miro actually strengthened her by a bit, but I also don't see her being super duper powerful, especially when you reach the higher arena ranks. As for the damage output of Bari, she's just overall a solid damage dealer, right? Her CC percentage is high, her damage output is high. If you have enough RNG, you can proc her secondary bullet, which deals even more damage. So overall, she's just a solid choice for Red. And for Colo, even though she's not the best leader unit like she was in the past, but she still does insane AoE damage. So she'll always be viable as a sort of backline kind of character, right? Because she can just hit really hard. And if let's say you can form an Earth team around her, I guess she's always going to be viable. Although at a point currently, Earth team isn't really the meta, but once in a while you'll still see Earth team coming in and out. So as long as Earth team is a thing, right, Bari will be there, unless the developer create a unit that sort of replace Bari in her role. And that's my take about Bari, and that's why we rank her on this score.
So Bari isn't really where she once were. The meta changed quite a lot, and I think we in Europe at least lost the last Bari from the top 100 with the introduction of Noxia. But obviously she had a good run, so she definitely has delivered. But there is a lot of things to counter her, like I said, and there's also a lot of RNG involved with her, so I think people just generally want to play other heroes at this time. Of course, you could pair her with Mayreel, but then again, that could be very dangerous, because then you obviously have 2 Earth units, and then there's 1 Lin, and yeah, it's probably not going to end very well. For Kulu, however, she is an excellent choice, either as a part of the team or the leader even. Her VS could really make it hard for the enemy, and I think she definitely has a spot there, depending on what you're facing, of course. And as for Raid, she's a solid 9. She will always deliver. Marina, of course, may have taken the leader spot, but she will still be in the team for, well, I don't really see her being changed in a very long time, if ever. Very worth Raid unit, that's for sure, if you want to deal a lot of damage with an Earth team. Maybe the only minus I can think of is that a lot of people have an Earth team if you're like thinking of picking something. So if you're committed and like for your guild and stuff, then it may be worth to check with others what they have as well. So you don't end up having like 30 people with Earth teams.
So moving forward, we look at Lupina, where we grade her 3 for Arena, 6 for Colo, and 8 for Raid. Honestly, I myself haven't seen many Lupina users in Asia 2 as well as the KR Arena, although I heard stories about her being pretty decent when Guardian Tales was first released. But considering her slow attack animation as well as the general slowness in her kit, right, in her weapon skill, etc., I doubt she will be of much use in the arena cause you can dodge her weapon skill easily. And melee isn't really a thing in Colo, so even though she's one of the better melee attack kind of hero, but she won't be that much of a use in Colo as well because melee really isn't a thing. So nobody's gonna bring like a melee buff to make her stronger. And yeah, Lupina just does so much damage that I think she will remain relevant for raid damage as well for a very, very long time because she works very well in tandem with Beth as she's buffed by Beth's melee attack party buff.
So Lupina is not a good choice for Arena. Might be one of the worst heroes in there. Her attacks are very slow and she isn't very tanky, and her weapon skill is very easy to avoid. I don't remember the last time I got hit, let alone being chained by one, so that's a very bad idea. As for Colo, however, she might be a decent lead, probably one of the better melee heroes at least. Still wouldn't bring her there, but she can cover the whole map with her VS if it faces the right direction. However, if it faces the wrong one, such as down or backwards, then obviously it's just wasted, and yeah, it's just going to be a liability than anything else, just like the rest of the melee heroes, even though she's technically ranged. As far as raids go, she's very potent for dark mono teams. She can deal a lot of damage, and she can be both an AI or a leader, depending on the boss. For example, Sand Monster and Evader only requires 2 weapon skills to chain, which is really, really nice to have her there. So that's definitely a worth investment for a dark mono team. So as a general thing, she's really reliable there.
So Lahn is 7 for Arena, 5 for Colo, and 4 for Raid. So Lahn might be a bit viable in Arena because future Princess Gap and in the future Mark 99 will be a thing. And she's more like a wild card in my opinion because I don't think you see Lahns running around in the arena, so people are not really used to her playstyle as well as her weapon skill, so sometimes people might not know how to handle her and they'll make mistakes against her. So she's not really that tanky because she's a warrior, so she has a much lower score compared to Marina, but she has the same score for Marina for raids because they roughly serve the same purpose and they're just equally bad in terms of dishing out damage, which is definitely crucial for raids as stated many times.
Lahn can require some practice to learn, but she can actually work really well in the right team setup and or the map. I'm personally not a fan of her, but I've seen people make it work, so I'm not gonna like shoot that down. I think that in Kulu she's one of the better melee, although she might be a bad pick of course now with the dark meta, and then again she's melee, so that doesn't mean you would bring her just because she's one of the best melees, because melees are still bad. As for raids, she's pretty much terrible. As we learned before, the ranged or the basic teams are ranged and not melee, and her HP buff won't really help anyone either. Maybe you are kind of new to the game and you want to have a basic team and the boss is scary or something, dealing a lot of damage, then maybe you could bring it, as a last resort kind of, while still getting the buff from Idol Eva or something. Sometimes you want to get creative, but then again, I would not bring this unit into like the basic team.
And next up is Eugene, where she's 7 for Arena, 2 for Colo, and 7 for Raid. So in Arena, she's not as strong as she used to be due to power creeping, but it's still possible to run her as there's so many dark units running around, so she's always a choice there. She's pretty squishy, so you can probably just do the hit and run in most cases right now, so that makes her pretty linear, but still very potent because of how fast she can run. And yeah, she basically just dash into a whole bunch of enemies in Colo, so you don't really see anyone running her in Colo because she will just, if she use her weapon skill, she'll fly in the middle of everybody and then she'll just die. If she normal attacks in, she will just die as well because she's really not tanky, so she's just bad for Colo. And party buff wise, she's melee attack, so she's part of the melee comp, right, with Beth and Lin as well. So you can equip her with the many two-handed swords of the different elements. That will definitely make her viable there.
Eugene, she's a lot of fun in Marina. I've had a lot of nice games with her. Sadly, she's not as useful as before, simply because there's a lot of new units now that make life really hard for her. She can work on the right map though. The problem with her, or maybe the problem for the enemy, depending on how you see it, is that she relies heavily on her chain. So you do want a lot of survivability on her. For example, defense cards and maybe an Ogma in the team even. I would not recommend her putting her with Beth or Lin. Because she's probably just gonna die before she can get the chain off, and that's where her damage is. For Colo, not a good choice. Once again, she's melee, she's kind of squishy too, and she's probably just gonna die. As for raids, she's solid there. She gives the melee damage, or the melee attack, party buff, and she can work in a light setup, like a melee one, that is. And the dark one, which is being consistently used by myself and many others. You obviously have to replace her weapon, however, with either a Tartaros or Predator, and of course changing the merchandise and everything. So
for Tinia, her attack does not pass through walls, and she has very paper thin defenses. And her weapon skill is pretty hard to aim. Sometimes I see people missing it within the arena. So she's a bit of wildcard. You see some people trying to run her, but in maps where there's walls, it's really easy to kite her. And she fits very well into ranged teams no matter what with her defense strat. So she's going to be viable in Colo and raids. And the defense debuff stacks with the ranged defense debuff. So she's always going to be like super duper good if you pair her with Nari, or you can just simply put her in Earth team because she's the defense shredder for the Earth team. So yeah, she's very viable. You can equip her with different elemental bows to fit into different elemental teams. You can fit her in Earth team, you can fit her in Water team, Dark range team if you even want to do that route. And yeah, just overall superb raid unit, so she's deserving of her 9.
Tinia is not a good choice for Arena, despite her range attack buff. The simple reason for this is that you can't shoot through the walls, and if you have an arena with walls, I mean, the enemy can just hide behind and you're not really gonna deal a lot of damage at all. I've seen some people wanting to like pair her with like Meryl and Rue, and while that could work, it's still, you're gonna do a big sacrifice there just for that 50% attack, and I wouldn't really do that kind of sacrifice. It's kind of like playing 2v3, even though it could maybe pay out on other 2 units. I don't think the trade-off is simply worth it, because you're also going to be pretty squishy. And like, for example, if I meet her on my FP or whatever, I would just stand and loot the box and not really care about her. And yeah, I'm not really a fan of her as well, like at all. You might as well just use a Nari, for example, or even the new MK99, for example. Then there is Colo. She definitely has a lot of uses there, either in a Bari team or with a dark bow, even in the Arabelle Noxia setup that we have seen, and works pretty well in there. So that's a different story. As for raids, she's one of the most potent units actually, thanks for her versatility. This, however, comes with a cost, and you do need to have a lot of bows ready for her. There is, of course, the dark bow, the basic bow, the light bow, and the water bow, and of course her own bow, which is earth. And so if you have all these bows, you can put her in a lot of different teams. And most raid teams are also ranged with, and her chain of course ends with airborne, so that's a nice little plus there. She definitely has a lot of potential in raids.
Now walls and the targeting mechanics of Vishuvac makes it really hard to play with her, and there's not much Earth heroes in the arena right now, although there's actually Muriel as we are speaking. But overall, there are other units that can deal with Muriel better. So Vishuvac isn't really gonna be a top pick, so her overall value isn't as high when you compare that with some of the other meta heroes, although she's definitely viable and definitely high skill. So Colo reasoning is the same as all the other warrior units. Simply because she's melee, she will dash into her death and she's not very tanky, so not good in Colo. But for raid, she isn't really fantastic because of a plus HP buff, although you can put her in the fire teams for her chain skill buff and for her high damage output or decently high damage output in raid. So she's viable there, but that's the only combination that I can think for her right now.
I wouldn't say she's bad per se with some practice, and she can be really deadly if you actually learn her. That's mostly the weapon skill, because you can kind of like do some slingshotting around corners and stuff with that. Um, However, there's a lot of water units, of course, that could make trouble for her. We have seen that she's popular on different servers, but she's not being used more or less. I think we have one in top 100 in Europe, for example, and there's obviously a reason for that. But if you can learn her, and she obviously gives the HP buff as well, which is useful, she could work. But I would probably not recommend it, not for now, anyways. Oh, and she of course has that blink thing as well, where like if you uses her normal attack and facing away from the enemy, you could actually like get a little teleport, so you can avoid things as well. But of course, that takes some practice to learn. As far as Colo goes, she's melee, so that's not a good option. I'm not going to add more to that actually. Just that I had a very bad experience in the start of the game using her there. She will just fly on the tank and then just get killed by whatever. As for raids, same thing there. She's kind of like a fire Lahn, giving the HP. The only place where I could think of using her, where I actually used her myself, was versus Harvester for her airborne to stun the boss. But then again, there are other also bad duct tape solutions. So I think that would be pretty much a last resort on that boss, for example.
Next up, we have Nari. So Nari is one of the best unit in the game right now, scoring a 9 for Arena, 9 for Colo, and 10 for Raid. So she's simply amazing in Arena as her attacks are quick, long range, and unpredictable. So although she has been nerfed by Noxia by quite a bit because Noxia basically eats her up, but she's still really powerful against everyone else. So overall, she still deserves that 9 score, and she's just so good on her own, right? A self buffing defense range unit, so she's a bit tanky even though she can dish out decent damage. So overall, right, she's one of the best range unit to be used for her party buff. And although the rise of dark units have made it hard for her, but as long as Princess, Gap, Mark 99 is gonna remain a thing in Arena, I think Nari will always have a place there to counter them. So overall, the Nari is an important centerpiece for range teams in Colo, right? Her range debuff, her range buff, and overall better tankiness compared to most range unit make her a really good range buffer, damage dealer in all the Colo teams. Now moving on to Raid. So Nari is hands down the best Raid unit you can get in the game because she's just so flexible. Her range attack debuff is what all the range teams desire for to boost their overall damage, and she's great in almost any range teams. She doesn't really even need like her elemental baskets to make her good because she's there for the range debuff, she's there for the range buff, and she's there because she's also much more tankier compared to many of the range units, so she can survive even the hardest hitting bosses sometimes. So right now, right, the extra crit from her chain skill is also a big plus because after proccing the crit from her chain skill, right, the overall damage output of your raid team increases tremendously. So she's a buffer, she's a debuffer, she's a range attack buff in terms of a party buff, and she's a great damage dealer. So overall, one of the best unit in the game.
Nari is a very solid option in a range comp for Arena. The only problem now, of course, is Noxia being out and she hard counters her. However, so you might still want to think twice about bringing her in some situations. But if you don't have an Noxia like ruining everything for you, she's going to be a very solid choice for you, especially when you master the whole running and kiting part with her. She's really good. Of course, the occasional Beth can also make life hard for her. But definitely a strong unit for Arena. One of my favorites if I would play ranged, actually. As for Colo, she has a solid spot there as well. In the basic mono or the Bari setups, or there's a few others as well. So she's not bad there, not at all. As for raids, I think she's hands down the best hero in the game. Not because her amazing damage, it's just that she has death thread, like defense reduction. She also has good damage, and she also has like an extreme versatility in terms of that like all teams want her, pretty much the range teams, which can be frustrating, of course, because you only have one Nari, and you can also use different element baskets for her if you want to go that road and experiment a little bit with that. But yeah, she's just a really amazing raid unit because, like I said, she pretty much works in any setup. Bianca is a very strong choice for a Gram or Nari setup in Arena, and she scales a lot with her damage, however, so she may be a pretty, like, she may require a pretty heavy investment, like an MLB weapon, which is of course not very accessible to many. The more damage she does, the more she will heal herself. So her chain is also kind of lackluster. It's like a frontal cone thing that goes on the floor, and you can just run up or down to avoid it. And it also doesn't really add that much element percentage, so it can be pretty frustrating trying to chain your opponent. But if you master her, she can be very, very good. And she also, of course, have the charged mechanic where the longer you hold, the more damage you will do, up to 200%, which of course makes it a little bit special playstyle, I guess you can say. But once you learn it, it could be a lot of fun with this unit, that's for sure. She hard counters Lynn, like there's no chance. However, Noxia in turn hard counters her, so that was a little bit problematic when Noxia was released. So yeah, the playstyle may not be for everyone, but if that's your cup of tea, then it's definitely a lot of enjoyment to be had from Bianca. For Kolo, a solid option in FP Garam Bianca Ogma setup, and that team still delivers today. I use it myself sometimes, and yeah, she's really solid there as well. As for raids, she may not be the best. However, on the last raid, she actually was a very good lead on the lava slime, simply because of the slime's size. So you would have like a lot of element on the boss, and you also have her self-healing ability, so she could just stand in all the damage and soak it, and that would of course activate her 5-star passive buff that will give her more damage every 3 seconds, and that was pretty sweet. Also, there is the problem of Nari, that she's being taken for a different team, and that's where Bianca can really come in, and she also, of course, bridges the setup between Garam and Nari, the chain, I mean, of course.
So for Bianca, my personal take about Bianca is that she's a very min-max unit. So she's not that powerful if you don't have her maxed out, but she's crazy if you have her maxed out, because I personally faced a few Bianca Nari combo within Arena, and when the max out Bianca actually crits on her weapon, she hits like a truck. So sometimes it's so unpredictable that you don't even know what hit you, just half your HP is gone for no apparent reason. So she's really strong at that. But if let's say you don't plan to invest in her fully in terms of max limit breaking her weapon, just like Lulleh mentioned earlier, then I guess she's not your go-to for Arena. But she's still strong, right? She pairs really well with the likes of other ranged attacker, your Nari Bianca combo, right? Your Nari gap combo, it works in a similar sense. So that's why Bianca will always have a place in Arena in that comp. And she's also a great partner with Garam in Arena as well. So you can consider her, let's say if you want to run like a dual water core kind of thing. And yeah, for Raid and Kolo, one thing, she's the best partner for Garam. So I shall not talk too much since everybody should know that by now. And yeah, she's just overall pretty decent because she deals damage, she buffs Garam, she's very viable with a lot of range unit. Whew, that was a long one. So that's it for part 1 of the ultimate tier list for the month of May. And I've included the overall score for the first 13 heroes that we talked about at the end screen right now, so you guys can refer to it, pause it to see it for yourself, finalize everything. And yeah, this tier list was really long and very hard to edit. And yeah, do remember to like this video if you like our informative content, and remember to subscribe to Lulleh as well as my channel to see more content from both our channel. And I'll see you guys again in part 2 of the video. Bye guys.